When I first started my recovery journey, I had no idea just how challenging the terrain would be. Looking back now, I can honestly say that this path has led to one of the most profound transformations in my life. As I've navigated the winding road towards sobriety and healing, I've had to confront the damage my addiction has caused, both to myself and to those I love. Making amends became a crucial milestone for me, but I've learned one of recovery's harshest realities. Sometimes, despite our sincerest efforts, forgiveness remains elusive. This painful truth forced me to explore how to continue my healing when reconciliation seemed impossible. I want to share what I've learned with you in case you're facing similar struggles on your own recovery path. I used to think making amends was just about saying sorry. I couldn't have been more wrong. Through my recovery work, I discovered that genuine amends involves so much more than acknowledging the specific harm I caused. Accepting complete responsibility for my actions without excuses, and demonstrating through consistent, changed behavior that real transformation has occurred. My sponsor taught me to make direct amends where possible, while being mindful not to cause further harm in the process. This balance wasn't always easy to find. What came as a complete revelation to me was understanding that making amends primarily serves my own recovery and spiritual development. Of course, I've hoped for forgiveness. Who wouldn't? But the profound lesson I had to learn was that I could not control others' responses. Whether someone offers forgiveness, expresses continued anger, or responds with indifference remains entirely their choice. A reality I had to come to accept, however painful it may be. The first time someone rejected my amends, I felt hurt, frustrated, and if I'm being completely honest, resentful. I'm trying here, I thought. Why can't they see that? But as I continued working my program, I developed the capacity to view the situation from the other person's perspective, and that changed everything for me. I realized their unwillingness to forgive rarely came from malice. More often, it reflected their ongoing process of healing from the pain I had caused. Trust, once broken, requires significant time and evidence to rebuild. What might have been momentary lapses in judgment on my part represented years of necessary healing for others. Their reluctance to forgive often served as a form of self-protection, a necessary boundary they maintained for their emotional well-being. I also had to recognize that my actions may have triggered deeper wounds than I could see. What I considered a relatively minor transgression could have activated profound traumas or insecurities within the other person. Their response wasn't solely about my specific actions, but was filtered through their entire life experience and personal history. Acceptance doesn't mean approval or resignation. This was a crucial distinction for me to learn. When I accept that someone isn't ready to forgive me, I'm not suggesting that their continued pain is desirable. Rather, I'm acknowledging reality as it exists, in the present moment, not as I wish it to be. My recovery has taught me the vital distinction between what lies within my control and what doesn't. I can transform my behavior, offer sincere amends, and commit to living differently. However, I cannot dictate another person's feelings, healing timeline, or decisions regarding forgiveness. True acceptance meant releasing my expectations about how my amends would be received. It required understanding that forgiveness represents a gift freely given, not an entitlement I could demand. This fundamental shift in perspective from expectation to gratitude created space for genuine peace to emerge in my life. The serenity prayer became my lifeline. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I recited these words countless times when facing rejection of my amends. My recovery journey, principle of emotional liberation through releasing expectation. This insight reveals that our deepest discontents stem not from circumstances themselves, but from our desperate grip on a particular result. When we chain ourselves to a specific visions of how life should unfold, we create the very conditions for our own disappointment. By loosening our hold on predetermined outcomes, we discover a more fluid relationship with reality, allowing us to navigate life's currents with greater equilibrium and presence. This isn't about indifference, but rather a profound recognition that our attachment to fixed expectations often binds us to the richness of what actually emerges. While I couldn't control whether someone forgave me, I discovered meaningful steps towards finding peace within myself. Living amends became my most powerful form of restitution. Even when others didn't acknowledge my efforts, living with integrity honored both my recovery journey and acknowledged the pain I caused. This consistent demonstration of change spoke louder than any words I might offer. Self-forgiveness presented perhaps my greatest challenge in recovery. Working with my sponsor, therapist, and spiritual advisor helped me extend to myself the compassion necessary for continued growth. Without self-forgiveness, I found my recovery remained incomplete. Respecting boundaries became essential in this process. Sometimes the healthiest approach for all involved was maintaining appropriate distance. Honoring another person's request for space became itself a form of making amends. I learned to focus my energy on receptive relationships, allowing healing to flourish where possible. While I didn't abandon hope for difficult relationships, I nurtured connections where my amends had been accepted and mutual healing was occurring. Finding support among others in recovery provided invaluable perspective. Those who had walked this path understood the unique pain of accepting unaccepted amends and offered experience-based wisdom and solidarity when I needed it the most. Writing unsent letters helped me process complex emotions. Expressing complete amends in writing, even if never shared, clarified my intentions and provided emotional release when direct communication wasn't possible. My recovery revealed a beautiful paradox. Sometimes resolving something requires stopping our attempts to resolve it. When I genuinely released my need for forgiveness, when I made peace with the possibility it might never come, I discovered the very peace I've been seeking. This didn't mean becoming indifferent to harm I'd cause. Rather, it meant entrusting outcomes to forces beyond my control, which for me meant my higher power and the natural unfolding of healing in complex human relationships. In some cases, people who initially rejected my amends later experienced a change of heart. In others, reconciliation never materialized. Either way, I learned my serenity depends not on others' responses, but on my willingness to accept life as it presents itself, with all its imperfections and unresolved elements. I've come to understand that recovery represents a continuing journey rather than a destination. The same applies to making amends and finding peace when forgiveness isn't offered. I experience days when acceptance comes naturally, and others when I struggle with lingering resentments or disappointments. During challenging periods, returning to recovery fundamentals becomes essential. Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. I remind myself that my primary purpose centers on maintaining sobriety and helping others achieve the same. I recommit to the principles guiding my recovery journey. Making amends isn't about keeping score or completing tasks. It's about becoming the person I was meant to be, someone capable of facing consequences with courage, living with integrity despite uncertainty, and finding peace amid life's unresolved chapters. Discovering inner peace when forgiveness isn't granted represents one of the most profound challenges I've faced in recovery. It demands practicing program principles at their deepest level, accepting what cannot be changed while continuing to live in ways that makes ongoing amends. The path to peace doesn't involve forcing forgiveness or persuading others to adopt my perspective. Instead, it means doing what's right regardless of outcomes, loving without conditions, and trusting that healing for myself and others unfolds according to its own timeline. Ultimately, I've learned the measure of true amends isn't counted in forgiveness received, but in how thoroughly I embody recovery principles throughout my life. When I live with integrity, compassion, and humility, I make my most meaningful amends to those I've harmed, to myself, and to the world around me. In this authentic living, I've discovered a peace that transcends external validation, a peace born from knowing I'm taking the next right action, one day at a time, regardless of whether that action is recognized